Yeah, for very good reasons.
For very good reasons, which we're going to kind of go into, I think, all around the houses today. But I think it was great. It sounds ridiculous, this, but you recommending a movie was a strange. No one comes up to me and recommends movies because they know I just snarl at them because they're just garbage. I just go away. Stop wasting my time. We know that they're moronic. I know sometimes got to sort of pad your mind out with stuff, and I do. I'm not averse to that, but not that often. But obviously it's about not obviously it is about Charles Dickens, and I'm not very well read in Dickens, although I have read Great Expectations, which is fantastic. And I keep starting to read A Tale of Two Cities, which just if anybody wants to know, A Tale of Two Cities is the biggest selling novel of all time. Interestingly, isn't it? Maybe you would have picked something else by Dickens, but it is. A Tale of Two Cities, the biggest selling novel of all time. 98 million copies. It might be over 100 million now. So, of course, he was writing at a time when these guys were superstars. Really, Dickens was a superstar in many ways, because all you've got really is, I suppose, vaudeville acts and theatre and writers and playwrights, that kind of stuff. There's not much else going on in the terms of the performing or the storytelling arts because radio didn't exist and the movies had not come along by then. So when you told me that it was about Dickens, I was keen. And then when I saw it, it was just so refreshing. And I keep going on about these things. And I know I'm beginning to mature and become like an old-fashioned person, but I quite like it, really. What's good about the film, for example, in very simple observation, in many things, but there's no bad language in it. This sounds twee, doesn't it? But it was so nice. It was good to spend an hour and 3/4 or whatever it was in the company of characters drawn that were effing and blinding every 3 minutes. I get exhausted with that kind of stuff. It's not that I'm sort of wet about it, but it was just good to be in the presence of characters that were doing that. And it was a very creative and inventive way of indirectly retelling the story of A Christmas Carol, I thought.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
It was...
You're right, though, about probably the most startling aspect of the movie to me when I first saw it was its lack of modernity, so to speak. There didn't seem to be any agenda involved in this thing. There was a noticeable lack of black and brown faces. I did not see one.
What did you say?
As you mentioned, the script also, no gratuitous cussing, no cute one-liners that so screw up modern movies today. None of those things in this, just fun entertainment. Like you say, a novel way of presenting things, and about a great man, about a great book, A Christmas Carol.
Yep.
And as a historian and as someone who knows a little bit about the 19th century world, especially Europe, of course, and a little bit about England, I was very impressed by the use of language in this movie, how in character it was with the 1840s when Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. Also, how well they had done with the costuming. I've seen images and photos from back then, and these were dead ringers. The hairstyles, even on the people, and of course, it was this wonderful script writing. There's nothing I could find wrong with the movie. I could not gripe or groan as I'm wont to do with every other modern movie. And by the way, folks, this is a modern movie. It was produced, I think, 2 years ago in Canada. I think it's by a Canadian production company, and it has not won any awards, of course, and probably never will for the reasons we've already given. It's just too damn good, too clean. There's no agenda. There's no minorities present. But it's like a time capsule. It's like going back to old England. Now, Mary, it wasn't. There was lots of bad things. There's bad things in this movie. You can see some of the poverty, some of the street people. Although that's in there, they did not dwell upon it. It's part of the atmosphere, part of the climate. And go ahead and tell the folks about how he delivered his message, the mechanism. Yeah, the mechanism for delivering this.
Yeah, it's a tremendously simple but inventive way, isn't it? And
Mm-hmm,
I mean, there's a
mm-hmm.
point to all that. We're not just talking about a nice film here, because I think the themes that we're touching on are what I'm addressing. Why it struck me is the absence of this quality in our lives, which actually used to be present several decades ago. It was when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
You could see films like this, and here's one. But the mechanism that they use is that, and of course this taps in. There's a good connection in that. What's the year? It's 1843, I believe. And Dickens had been, in the early part of that year, he came to America on his first trip. And it was a very successful trip until he returned to England. And I think in the summer wrote a book, or the late spring, called American Notes. And I was reading about this. This book didn't go down too well over in America, which was everybody was a bit cheesed off, to use an English phrase, with him. He was warmly welcomed, as Americans often do, to English people. And I was kind of squirming when I was going off and reading some of these reviews. And Dickens got a bit snotty about things. And it was as if he'd written a rather critical travelogue of his visit to America. There were very good things that he mentioned, but there were other things that drove him crazy. Spitting was at the top of his list. I think he had the American, seriously, he had Americans down as the world spitting champions. And there's a great little anecdote where he was traveling from New York to Philadelphia, about a 6-hour train ride. And he said, I'm on the, I've kind of given the game away, but let's go through it anyway. He said, I'm sat on the train. I'm paraphrasing. He says, I'm sat on the train looking out the window. He says, very pleasant. He said, all of a sudden, after a couple of hours, I see all these feathers flying past the window. I thought, that's interesting. What's all this? Must have some chickens. I mean, seriously, it was something like that. So he wants to know more. He gets out of his chair and he walks to the back of the carriage where the two carriages join. I don't know what word you use for that over in the States. Maybe but the connecting platform between the two carriages, So he stood on there so that he can lean and look down the side of the train. And he looks down the side of the train. All he can see is a shower of expectoration coming out of the windows.
Oh,
he said, yeah, seriously. And he said it was a swarm of Americans who were just spitting and did so for the rest of the journey. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I'm quite impressed, really. I mean, that's a serious amount of saliva anyway. But he seemed to bang on about this a bit. Yeah.
That's a habit it took us a while to give up, and we haven't completely given up on it. When I was a kid, I can still remember the signs saying, do not expectorate on the sidewalk.
I remember just before we kicked off, I heard that familiar ding as you hit the spittoon there in your home. So, there was that going on, wasn't there? But he gets to Philadelphia. I mean, this is before the story, but he gets to Philadelphia, and there's another little comedy thing where he gets off and he stays in some hotel, and he gets up the next day and he says, Philadelphia is a magnificent provincial town. He says, not like New York. He said, it's good. It's got echoes of the past, but it's laid out in a grid system. He said, I went off for a walk, all these neat houses and buildings and everything, which he quite liked. He said, after about an hour and a half, he said, I was going mad. I was looking for a curve in the road. I needed a curve or a hill. He said, there was nothing of the sort. And of course, it's the complete opposite of London. Anybody that's been to London or into certain parts will know that it is completely higgledy-piggledy, fiddly. There are alleys everywhere. You can go through one place and hop out into another. It's very much still like that, which is, it's not an intentional design to create otherworldly charm. It's just that the city was designed, that way. It was designed that way. Yeah.
And you say that about...
He'd go mad, would Dickens. I could imagine bleakly looking at this big grid system of Philadelphia and going, good grief, where's the joy in this,
Yeah. But yeah, that's funny the way you express that about the curviness of all European cities, or at least many European cities, as opposed to American cities on the grid. I love the curviness, though, especially in villages, things like that. But one of my favorite scenes throughout this movie we're talking about, The Man Who Invented Christmas, about Charles Dickens, was the scriptwriter's interpretation of what it must be to create a writing. You remember the scene where Dickens is in a room by himself and he's trying to come up with the main character's name. He's going through Screech, Scrouch, Scroach. Yeah. He's going through all that and finally comes up with Scrooge. And then from then on, Scrooge is a pretty regular character throughout the movie. basically kicking him in the butt. Every time he tries to think about something else, there's always Scrooge or somebody there that's in the book. And that's, I know a little bit about that from being a writer myself this last 30 years. That's what you do. When you're on a book, it's consuming most of your thinking time, no matter what you're doing. It has a way of interjecting itself into your thoughts. You can be looking out the window at birds, laughing at them, whatever, and then suddenly one of the characters that you're trying to describe in a book suddenly materializes. And maybe you get an idea, a better way to describe this person or what they're doing. But Scrooge was merciless in this movie. Yeah, he was always there. He was nasty and nasty character. But it's an amazing movie. It's one of my favorite, and believe me, I don't give that ranking out too easily, especially with a modern film.
It is. We're gonna carry on talking about that in a wee while. We've got this is all new to me, Michael, by the way. So we've got I think we've got a break coming up right now. So we'll be back after the break, everyone. There we go. I think we're okay. I don't think they can hear us, so we should be okay. and if they can, well, this is what we're like when we're not on air, everybody. Okay?
Well, that movie, though, yeah, that is, I think my favorite movie. Well, I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to say it's one of my top 5 favorite movies, and I've only seen it once. All the rest I've seen probably a dozen times. I just can't stay away from them. But I will watch this movie once every year around that same time. That's how much I love it. But yeah, it hasn't won any awards, nor will it win any awards for the reasons we've talked about. I think we've talked that to death. So what are we going to talk about now?
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? We will run. And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendivite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed our technical brilliance and genius just there with the breaks. This is all a little bit foreign to me. I'm getting used to it. It's a bit queer. Anyway, you're listening to the Dennis Fetcho Show. It's Inside the Eye Live, the Thursday show. Dennis is not here. I said that earlier on. I might say it again. You never know. Paul English here at the helm. I'm joined by Michael Goodrich, and we are in the middle of a juicy conversation about Dahl's chickens, as I often refer to it. Michael, are you with me again?
Yes, sir. Here.
Fantastic. So, sorry, I often refer to him as Dahl's chickens because it's just one of these little things that I do. And but where were we? We were talking about that little device that's used in the film. Mm-hmm. And you were just, I think when we just went to the break, we were covering this bit about him struggling with the name. And there was something that it pinged off in my head, which in that particular scene, he has in the house, if you recall, he hires a new maid, as it were, or a tutor to look after his children. And he was rather productive in that department. I think he had 11 or something. He had plenty, believe you me. So what with all the writing and the children, there's no wonder he died at 58 or whatever. He didn't make 60, I know that. But when he's going through that little routine of trying to find the name, when he finally gets it, that maid looking at him, she said, "What is it with the name?" And he says, once you've got the name, you've got the whole character. It just talks to you. And of course, from that point on in the film, Christopher Plummer, who is playing the sort of prototype of Scrooge, starts to talk and give Dickens an awful lot of feedback, as you remember, about how he's mucking it up and getting it wrong. It's a really inventive way of getting the point across. And I loved it, but it was very good. I was just going back to the Philadelphia story as well. Don't worry, I'm not going to get back to spitting, even though I know everybody's keen to hear more spitting stories. But I would really recommend this. Anybody wants to go and dig it up. Go and have a look at American Tales by Charles Dickens. I think you can get it on Gutenberg.org. Most of his stuff's free there. There's a chapter the whole chapter on going to Philadelphia, there's a bit where he goes to the Philadelphia Penitentiary. So this is 1843. And Dickens is what? I don't know what age he would have been then, in his late 20s, early 30s. I mean, he did most of his... The reason he writes about things with such intensity is that he spent years as a court reporter watching the most distressing cases come before magistrates. And, of course, as we see in the film, Michael, his father... this is all true. You get an insight into Dickens, the things that formed his character. His father was hauled off to prison for not paying debts, went to debtor's jail, and... young Charles was made the head of the family at 9 years of age and sent off to a factory to make shoe polish, which brought darkness into his life in every way. Not only the polish itself, but an awful lot of grim stuff. And when he goes to Philadelphia, this is it's very, very poignant, and it's definitely worth reading. Very intense. He's talking about the fact that at that time, the Philadelphia Penitentiary, which was a handsome building, I believe, he describes it as something as such, was running a policy of a solitary confinement for everything. For everything. I mean, if you'd committed murder, of course, you would have hung back then, or whatever they did. But everybody was in solitary confinement. So this is before the Civil War, 1843. There he is. And he's going in and seeing guys who are going to be... So there was one guy who was in solitary confinement for 11 years. 11 years. I mean, it's unbelievable. And other guys in for 3 for receiving stolen goods and things that we would, think were ridiculous by today's standards. And I can't really sort of do it justice by going over the whole thing, but if anybody gets time, it's worth a 10 or 15 minute read to see Dickens' analysis of how this process has literally destroyed the souls of these people. And maybe some of them are bad. I accept that. I'm not trying to be sort of wet about the whole thing. But he said, something along the lines of, he said, I think this to be by far the cruelest of all punishments, for it leaves scars that we cannot see, and they are more lasting and permanent and disfiguring of the soul, something to that effect, It's quite heartrending stuff. And there is tremendous sort of, I suppose we would maybe look back on it and call it melodrama, but there's such an intensity about the pain and suffering of people at that time. One of the things I'd say about the film, about The Man Who Invented Christmas, is I think many listeners are probably used to those sort of films set in the 19th century where everybody is incredibly dour and grim and glum and serious about everything all the time. And that doesn't come across in that film, does it? There's a lot of jollity, which seems quite natural. And I was thinking afterwards, I thought, yeah, they must have been happy at some point during their lives. I mean, why not capture a bit of it on film every now and again? They don't have to be serious all the time,
Yeah, that's true. The movie is a lively film. It's nothing. It does tell Dickens' story. It tells his life, a little bit about his life. And I think more importantly, it allows you to come into the mind of a writer, what he goes through to create. But yes, it's lively, it's colorful. You might not think, some folks who like a good old-fashioned shootout Western, that it's all that entertaining. But I like the Westerns too, but I enjoyed this very much. It's a work of genius, I think. It's a masterpiece movie. And if you don't enjoy it, well, so be it. But
yeah.
You're listening to two people who really did. I'm going to watch this movie once a year at that time. That is around Christmas. Until the day I die, which might be next
well, yeah,
year.
it's got it has that same sort of sentimental, if that's the right word. It probably isn't, but it has that same sort of emotive force that you get when you watch It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, which is is ridiculously heartbreaking, and I can't stand it because I love it so much. That kind of thing. It's just an astonishingly. There's nothing wrong with the film. It's perfect in every detail. Even the tragic bits are perfectly tragic, and you just look at it and you go, I wouldn't have mind being Jimmy Stewart's mate and hanging around there. That looks glorious, It looks glorious.
It's refreshing to have a morality in a movie.
Yes.
There is a quality about it that made me feel better after I watched it. And that's a rare thing anymore. Generally, I'm so depressed and so outraged by what I've just seen. I want to go vomit mostly, but this is different. This is really different. It's, as you mentioned, it's hearkening back to a better age of movie making. But this would have been a classic even back then, though.
Yeah, I think it would. And I think, you're hitting the nail on the head with this this moral, this backbone of decency that runs through it. There are other films and other things that I've seen recently that have also got it, but as we are aware, these things are being interfered with. Anyway, from one writer to another, I meant to ask you this. When did you, Mr. Goodrich, first sort of seriously put pen to paper with the view that you were going to get published on things? How long ago was that? What sort of age when that began for you?
I've had old classmates come back recently and say, "Do you remember that time you wrote that poem in the third grade and the teacher held it up and pasted it on the board and things like that?" To be honest, no, I don't remember that. I remember getting a D in high school English. I remember taking freshman comp in college 3 times to pass it. But it was probably when I really started associating with some great writers, that is, reading what they wrote, that I thought, man, I'd like to do this. I'd like to write with that passion. I'd like to draw these images as well as they did, images of the people, the things they're describing. And it did kind of overcome me. I've got to say that I wanted to try it myself. I'm not a mechanic, not an electrician, even though my dad was an electrician and wanted me to learn. But it was probably, I'll put it this way. It was, I was painting watercolors for a very modest living in New England for 3 years. And it was one winter night around the fireplace in Boston, where I lived, downtown Boston. Hadn't been selling too many paintings, and I just read Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And I thought that's one of the most magnificent stories, so well told. And I've always loved history. In fact, I majored in that in college. And so I thought, let's give it a shot. I'd already done some research for a book before I left Kansas, where I'm originally from. So I had a lot of notes on hand. That very night, that this overwhelming urge to write came upon me, and I decided to follow that. I went to work on an outline. I think I'm smart enough to realize that the stream of consciousness thing is not going to work. I'm going to have some organization to this thing. So I went to work on this outline, and I finished it early that next morning. And that outline I kept all the way through until this book was finally published. I kept going back and forth to it. I would add, subtract a little bit here and there. But that's the passion. I started doing more research at the Boston Public Library that week. And then the book.
What decade are we talking about?
That would have been the 80s, 1980s.
All right. Yep.
But then the hard part begins. I couldn't find a publisher, and that went on for 8 years. So I got back to doing things like moving back to Kansas, landscaping, things like that, working for a living. And finally, I had a friend who took me under his wing and got me through the door of a small press, a small university press. And that book was finally published, and that it got good reviews. It didn't sell much because it's from a really small university press, but the reviews it did get, and the people who did comment upon it, it was what someone like me really needed. They were talking about, they were talking about how easy it was to imagine what I'd just written, because I'd done a fairly good job on that. And that was it. There was no more thinking about anything else in my life, no more for painting, no more wanting to become an astronaut, anything like that. It was all about writing, and I just went on, and it got easier and easier to find publishers. And I'd get nice advances, too, for the books, because I was publishing with mainstream press, university presses. And then finally, my books have always been fairly controversial in their own genre. The Civil War was my first great interest, and I knew there was a lot of room there for some revisionism. Mm-hmm. And then the Indian Wars, of course. I really was one who got sick and tired of the movies that were going around at the time. Little Big Man, Soldier Blue. They were just anti-white diatribes, basically. They were propaganda. And so I really got pretty sick of that, because I'd done enough research in the Indian Wars to know that was bogus BS that they were passing out in the movies and portraying them as truth, history. And so I went to work on an Indian War book, and that was my most controversial to that point in time. But still, it made the military... either the military or the history book club main selection for that month. Doubleday book club. I was making some really nice money from the book, even with a controversial subject like that. And I didn't pull any punches in that thing either. Suddenly, we were not talking about peaceful pastoralists, the Indians taking gentle care of nature and all of mankind, only reluctantly going to war, treating captured white women like Indian princesses or something like that. No, this is a real. This is the way.
This wasn't really Hiawatha, was it?
No, it was none of that.
This Even though I love it, and this is scalp dance. Is that right? That you're referring to?
Yes, it's scalp dance. But I told it as accurately and honestly and without bias, I might say. I hope. As I possibly could, because I'm one of those people who wants the truth, whether it kills me. I want the truth, and I don't like propaganda, and so I was determined not to write propaganda. I wanted to write history and let the people choose themselves what they like about it. If they think it's a good book, well, then so be it. But that's where my controversial writing started in, and I wrote a couple of books on Lincoln that I thought they were fairly controversial. But then, of course, Hellstorm was the book that, that was me passing beyond the pale. There was no more looking back. Being blackballed here and there, I couldn't find a publisher for 10 years for that one.
But anyway, right? That was okay. So Scalp Dance, when did you put that together? That was the 90s, was it? In the 1990s?
It was published in 95, I think.
Right.
I can't remember, but 95, yeah. Like I said, I wasn't having any problems publishing a book 1 year after I'd written it there for a while because people wanted my books very much.
Yep.
But and Scalp Dance didn't hurt that either. Then the Lincoln books came out and they got some nice receptions. But Hellstorm, of course, that was suddenly I became a three-eyed, four-horned monster after that in the publishing world and in the media. By the way, I had no trouble whatsoever with the earlier books. Getting really nice media gigs, major radio, major TV, major newspapers, things like that, which were reviewing these books. But there was none of that with the Hellstorm.
So, I mean, we could say in a way that you started off looking at Red Indians and then you strayed off the reservation, did you not? And you got into a lot of trouble, right?
That really sounds good and poetic, and it's accurate too.
You can put that on the dust liner joke, Jackie, for the next one. Okay.
But that's it. And the fact is, I would never go back. If I had it to do over again, I would still write Hellstorm.
So let's just. I'm interested in this. This is because I have Hellstorm from you. You were kind enough when I purchased it from you back in 2014 to put a cracking little note in the beginning, in the forward. You put a little hand note, which was really kind of you. I mean, I wasn't expecting that sort of thing, but that was great. It was your little attention to detail there really got my attention. So, but it's how you've gone. How you went from that topic, looking at Scalp Dance, that particular, and the Lincoln book. So we're talking about, what one would expect of an American writer to look, say, at American history in the 19th century. That makes a lot of sense. I can understand that. Obviously, America still are involved in the hell that was the European arena for the 20th century and all the death there. How did you move in your mind? What was it was this a series of things, or was there one particular thing that triggered you to begin to swing your attention over into that direction?
Well, nobody else was writing about it, and I started finding out more and more things. And we were going through this good war scenario in America, fought by the greatest generation, Americans, by the way. Mm-hmm. And I'd been political ever since I got out of the military in the 70s. And so I had snooped around. I wasn't oblivious to what was going on in the world. Dr. William Pierce, David Duke, people like that. I'd listened to people like that and read what they were writing. And so even though I was writing about 19th century America at the time, Indian Wars, Lincoln, Civil War, I was aware politically of what was going on in the world. And I was well read enough to know that there is no book out there that's really told World War II the way it really played out, especially to the losers, the ones who lost that terrible, terrible war, far from a good war. And it was after I wasn't then, and I'm still not now, an expert on World War II. But the things the Germans went through in their defeat and their occupation, so-called peace, I knew that there was just nothing out there. Now, there were several people, brave, bold, intrepid individuals who had written about various aspects of my subject, that is, what the Germans went through. But there was nothing comprehensive. There was nothing total about it. And I thought, this is a possibility. And I started doing the research, and I found out that there's more than a possibility. There's an absolute need for this, to know what it's like to lose the world's worst war. And it wasn't, I've never seen a movie even come close to what it was actually like. And certainly the Americans don't want anybody to know about what they did, or the Brits, or the Russians, or anybody else. But the more I found out, the more I realized this has to be told. If for no other reason that we never repeat this damn thing. Never have another war like that. And we've got it, of course, now in the Middle East. Something virtually the same things are being played out in the Middle East. Massive deaths, overwhelming bombings of cities, rape, torture. It's still going on in the Middle East. But nevertheless, when I did the research for Hellstorm, and well, to make a long story short, I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. Nothing prepared me for Hellstorm, the things I would find out.
We spoke a few months ago, didn't we? In fact, I think I was speaking to you the early part of last year, in fact, when we sort of connected after a couple of years of hiatus. I don't know for why, it didn't really matter. And we were talking at that time about Dresden. And I think I asked you then, and I was just wondering if you could add a bit more to it. I wasn't aware at the time that there were these things in America called German clubs, or if I've phrased it right, but clubs for Germans. And you were telling me at that time that you did a lot of research in these clubs. Is that right? And
correct. That's correct.
So one of the things I was thinking about before we did this today as well, I was thinking, that thought popped up yesterday. I was thinking about that, and I thought, well, what age were they, and what was their emotion as you were talking to these people? I mean, I'm assuming, obviously, that many of the sort of is testimonials. It's not an advert for World War II, but the quotes that you provide throughout the book are obviously taken, I suppose, in great part from these conversations you had with these people in these clubs at various times as you built it up. What were they like as people? I mean, what was how old would they have been at this time? In their 70s and 80s, or maybe a little bit younger? I don't know.
Yes, I actually did speak with one lady who I think she was in her late 50s or maybe early 60s, but generally You're right, 70s, 80s. The overall feeling I got talking to each person. Now, I've talked to people at the German clubs. No, we didn't really talk, or I didn't do any interviews at the clubs themselves, but we would set up dates that I'd come over, have coffee at their breakfast table. And the general feeling was one of silence and quiet. And, there was... how do I say this? Okay, I will say it as it comes to me. There was no enthusiasm. There was no happiness involved. Of course, it's a subject we're talking about, of course, and I'm making them go back in their memory bank and draw these things out. And they do have great memories, though, Germans, even in the 70s and 80s. And so in their 70s and 80s. And so I would never ask certain obvious questions. Were you raped? I assumed they were all raped. No one ever offered the fact that they were raped 10, 20, 30 times as when they were 12-year-old children. But from my research, I can almost guarantee you they all were. Yeah, they all were on the Eastern or the Western Front, where the Americans were coming in. The Americans, they would mention things like that first winter after the war was technically over, crossing the frozen parts of the Baltic to reach some area where they could dig with their hands frozen potatoes to live on. They were starving to death. They would tell me things like that. They would tell me that my husband, one lady was married during the war. Her husband, after the war, was a slave for, I think, 7 years in Scotland.
Yeah.
And we're not talking Siberia. We're talking, it was either England or Scotland, I forget. And maybe it wasn't 7, maybe it was 5 years. My memory's not so great.
As they were talking through this time, I mean, just to let you know, we've got about a minute to the break as well, just so that we can pace this. I think we've got a minute to the break. But as they were going through this and telling you, did it strike you that this was a surprise to them? And was it a surprise to you, these details? Had you stumbled across them anywhere else, or were they providing a level of detail and insight that was very, very new to you?
There were certain things like her one woman's baby brother in his crib. Every time the bombers would come over, headed for another city, almost always, but he would cry in his bed, "Mama, Mama, airplanes, airplanes, airplanes," the baby. They would tell me little things that you're not going to find in history books, things like that. It was the saddest time because virtually everybody had a terrible story to tell. And again, it's not the obvious that I already know. But there's some of the most charming, sweet, honest, decent people I've ever met in my life. Yeah, they got the shit kicked out of them. They were absolutely destroyed during the war. Maybe perhaps not physical, but mentally. Yes, they all, the most quiet group of people I've ever run into in my entire life, period. So it was a terrible defeat they suffered.
Okay, we're into the break now, Michael. We're into the break, so we'll mute out here, and we'll be back with you in a few minutes' time.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia. at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? We will run. And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendovite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Inside the Eye Live, InsideTheEyeLive.com, with Dennis Fetcho, except, of course, those of you with sharp ears will have denoted that I am not Dennis Fetcho. I'm standing in for him. It's Paul English here. We're at the beginning of the second hour here at revolution.radio. You can head over to revolution.radio for accessing archives, which I think are available for a nominal sum each month. And also lots of other material, and see the full schedule there. So revolution.radio is the place to head. We're here on Studio A. We're with you for the next hour. And I'm joined for this second hour by the same person who's with me for the first hour, Michael Goodrich. Michael, are you still alive and with me?
Yes, you can't get rid of me. I'm
Good.
here for good.
Good. This is what we want. So
bump me off anytime you want. Anytime you.
No. It's it's midnight here in the UK, where I'm, where my bottom is nailed down, and of course you're luxuriating at nice just after 7 o'clock time, aren't you? I assume everything's going fine for you. Your life works, but me, I'm in this little hole in the middle of the night.
Let me rub it in a little bit more. Today
Yeah,
was
go on, do it.
beautiful 70 degrees here in Florida, and it's a beautiful evening out. In fact, we've got the air conditioning on
Yeah,
now.
anyway, swiftly moving on, Michael. That's all very interesting.
Okay, I'll stop there.
No, I tell you, I had a good, in terms of personal anecdotes, we had a good little day today because I live by the sea. And in the winter, there's something, I get attracted by the bleakness. I think it's maybe the perversity of middle years or something, but you do. I have anyway. And there was no breeze here today at all. So the sea was like a mill pond. Mm-hmm. And the air was very clear, which normally would be great. But unfortunately, they've spent £1,400 million on a wind park, and they've plonked it in the sea, and it's destroyed the entire ambience of this coastal little town. Ouch. So I daren't go down because everything infuriates me these days, and it's going to kill me. I'm literally going to explode one day out of anger, But while we were down there, I make a habit of actually trying to ruin as many people's day as possible by going up, talking to them. It's a thing. You just think, well, the clock's running out. I can go and distress that person with a question, So, this thing, look, I'm not a flat earth guy. I'm not, right? I just, so I don't want to go over into that. That's not what we're doing. That's right out completely. We're not touching that. However, today, when I'm walking down the sea, when you get those wonderful, when the sun is above the clouds, and it's striking the cloud, and you get this great fanning of the rays of the sun through a huge range. They're called crepuscular rays, right? And the only reason I wanted to bring this up was so that I could say the word crepuscular. It's so good. So I was going up to people. I said, look at those crepuscular rays. And they were looking at me very, very puzzled, which is what I was hoping for. And it's what I got, And they said, what? They're all looking quite gormless. They're slack-jawed. What? I said, how does that work then? I said, if that thing's 93 million miles away, can you explain those light beams? And everybody sat there. I got this old guy scratching his head gut. He says, I never thought of that. I said, nobody thinks about anything much. I said, we could start with that. I said, if you get the answer, will you come and tell me what it is? I mean, seriously, I don't know. But you see, there's things staring people right in the face, right where they live, and they just don't even, bother to think about it.
So now we know how you get your kicks. You're sick. Yeah.
I do. I like to engage people all the time. I'm always saying, hello, good morning, all that kind of stuff,
You're a Dickens character.
To bump into their space, you've got to, I'm surrounded by, you've got it there. This zombification process is not good for me. I on a personal level, I don't like it. So I'm waging a one-man sort of, happy clappy club. I'm going, hello, you don't even know me, but what about that thing up there? And the people immediately want to start talking. Nobody talks to anybody much anymore, apart from me. But no, that's not true. It's Graham Hart could talk a bit, and those guys over there, they're fantastic. So we've got a lot of that going
too. Yeah, I've got quite a few years on you, so I know exactly what you're saying. And I do find myself in some old moments, you might say. I'm doing certain things that I would have never thought of doing, but nothing like that. But, one thing I want to mention here, and you also mentioned this, as old as I am, I'm 11. I'll put it that way.
That's a lovely way of putting it too. Put it like a real writer.
But an illness, I just found an illness. It's a definable illness that I have suffered from all my life, and I still suffer from it, is something called performance anxiety. That's the fear about performing or going on stage or juggling, balls or anything. It's going out and being scared to death of the audience. I'm still suffering from that. I did not sleep a wink last night thinking about this. I knew I'd be carrying my fair share of the load on this thing. And I kept thinking, what if I screw this up? What if
I was hoping you were going to do the whole thing.
Oh, God.
That's the reason I roped you in.
But I think back to my first attempt at public speaking. I was invited to my university. My first book had came out at the same time as a couple of professors. So I was sharing the stage with two other people, and I was invited to speak at my university to a small crowd.
How old are you? How old are you at this time? I
would have been in my late 30s. Late 30s. So I got a late start in this. But anyway, I got drunk the night before the talk, and I got drunk the next day before the talk. So I
Not
was
during the talk, though. Not during.
Yes, I was drunk during the talk.
I'm
That's the
impressed.
only way I felt I had to do this. I was invited by a great group of people. I had to show up, but I was scared to death. I bought a $30 suit off the racks to dress up, to go there, and I didn't even know what I was saying. Apparently, people applauded and said it was a good talk and all that. But that's what I mean by this illness that I still carry this day, this performance anxiety thing. And I've been on since then. I've spoken to hundreds of crowds, I've done hundreds of talks, live talks in person, and I've done countless radio, and I've done a lot of TV. But generally, it's still the same thing. Now, I don't get drunk anymore. I stopped doing that. It's just
we can do that next week if you like. we could do the backup show to this. We go, this is the one that you really wanted to listen to, not this one when everything was called a control. This is when the guys are completely out of whack. We could do that next week.
If I don't know I'm going to be on, for instance, let's say you called me up today. You said, okay, well, it'd be fine. It'd be normal. It'd be natural. But you didn't. You called me up yesterday.
It's the thinking time that built.
I had all night to think about that.
I know. It's not a bad thing, though. Look, it's a good thing. It means you're alive. At least you could go, hey, that's a good sign. At least I'm alive.
I didn't get a wink of sleep last night, so I'm just
sorry about that. I'm sorry.
But again, the illness part of that, I've never been cured from it. Despite all the experience I've had since then, I'm still the same person.
I think it's quite normal, really. You know,
Look at you. Look at you. You get on. You could, if you knew in a year in advance, you would be speaking to the EU on a very important subject. You wouldn't lose a minute's sleep. I can guarantee you that. I know you now well enough that you'd be ready to go.
It could be. I don't know. I'd be nervous about going there and sort of lamping someone or something. At the EU. I mean, you can't go down there. It's a silly place, isn't it? But I know that when I was, it wasn't always like that. For me, I actually had, I threw myself into situations when I was younger to overcome it. Let's see, when I'm in my sort of late teens, 17, 18, 19, right? I decided I wanted to sing in bands. It's a strange thing to do, but I did. Well, not any old band. My mate was a good guitar player, and we decided to do this thing. He said, are you sure you're going to have the bottle to get up and do it? I said, no, but I'm going to do it. And the first time we did it was at some little sort of youth club that we used to go to. In fact, interestingly, I'm going to be seeing a lot of those guys in about a month's time because one of them has now hit the ripe old age of 60. And I'm sort of going, do I really want to go? 60? What's going on? This is wrong. How did it get like this? What's going on with this? But I stood up there they had a stage and lights and everything, and we did a set for about 40 minutes, and nobody threw anything at us, so it was not too bad. I mean, maybe they were a pretty tame crowd. They were all pretty young, but we then went off and played in pubs, real dives all over Yorkshire where I was at times, and there was two that really stand out. One is we went to a pub in Bradford, which is now, if you go to Bradford now, you play a game called Spot the Snowflake. Bradford is basically sort of Islamabad West, it's a ridiculous place. But at the time, it wasn't like that. This had been 1980, something like that. Anyway, we go to this really big pub on a Saturday night, and everybody used to go to the pub because the bands that were on. But the thing is, they'd forgot to advertise us. So when we got there, there were two people at the bar, the landlord, his landlady, and their dog. So they said, we're terribly sorry. We didn't tell anybody you were coming. I said, oh my God. So we played anyway. It was great. It was really good. And the landlady said, you're really good. So it'd be even better if you actually let other people know that we were here. There was that one. And then the other one was we drove off into one night miles away to about 40 miles. Well, for us, a 40-mile drive, right, through all these rickety country lanes, and to play this pub on a Friday night or something, full of farmers. And it was very difficult to know whether they were even alive. They were alive, obviously, but it was very, very difficult to know if they were alive. The place was packed. Nobody reacted at all. We played the first sort of 40-minute half set, got off. And one of them came up to me and said, that was really good. That was all. I said, what? I mean, they weren't moving or anything. You wouldn't have known that they were even alive. Yeah. People they all had their beer sitting on their stomachs and they were just nodding. That was all you got out of people up there. They just nodded a bit. So I kind of went to hell with it all, really. But It's just one of those things, isn't it? It's hey, it's fine. I think it's good because it puts you on edge. I was a bit on edge when we started. I'm sure the listeners are loving this. Come on, send your anxiety problems into Uncle Paul and Uncle Michael, and we'll get you all sorted out. So I'm worried about this and worried about that. But yeah.
Let me throw in something real quick about my probably the worst talk I've ever been involved in. A former wife and I, we were scheduled to speak in a Washington, D.C. suburb, Montgomery County, at a very nice venue, by the way. We've been there before, and every time we were there, C-SPAN, an American TV station, would be there to video us, tape us live. And the night we were scheduled to speak there, we happened to drop in at the same time that the D.C. snipers were killing people, shooting people at random. I don't know if you remember that. It was back in 2002 or 3. And we had come all the way from Kansas, and we had heard about the snipings going on in the D.C. suburbs. And we thought, well, by the time we get there, they're going to catch this guy or guys. And so we took a long way. We went up through Canada just to give ourselves a few more days before we get there. Yeah. And it didn't work. They had not caught the people. So I'm unloading the car out in the parking lot. There is nobody out there walking around because don't forget these snipers were shooting anybody, gas stations, coming out of shopping malls, going into Starbucks, whatever. And so there was nobody out there. I got the stuff off in record time. My bald head, I thought it was a perfect target for any sniper out there, but I got everything in. That night we had a full house. People somehow managed to get out, fight their fear, get out and listen to us. But we're on TV, keep that in mind. And we're giving what is a pretty good talk, I think. We did a tandem talk. Me speak, she speak. I'm talking about my ex-wife at the time. And we go back and forth. We weren't getting any response at all. No response. And sometimes we'd have a lot of,
it's always thrilling when you get that.
Yeah, sometimes we'd have a lot of levity in it. Sometimes we'd have a lot of drama that people would go, ooh, ah, or laugh. None of that this night. They were all in there, but nobody was raising a hand to applaud or do anything. And that was probably the worst talk I've ever had in my life. We gave it all we had, but it didn't matter. People's minds were not in that venue. They were outside on the streets. And the next morning, my wife had to have her Starbucks, so we drove over there after the talk next morning. And we actually saw people running. They had to have their Starbucks, too. So they were running from their cars to the Starbucks to get their coffee. As we headed home, 500 miles away in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I actually saw people hiding behind their doors as they filled their tank up with gasoline. So that was the D.C. sniper incident, but that was
I remember that. Well, I know of it a little bit. Yeah, I know of it a little bit. That sounds that's good. That's good. But by the way, whilst you were saying this, Michael, Dennis has just been pinging in with a few messages, which complete blather. No, he's great. He says, "Hope all is going well. I'm headed to the hotel from the airport." I said, "Yeah, disguised as a nun." He says, "An accomplished writer like Michael should have been a bit more creative than that." I said, "That was me." He says, "Thanks a lot."
Serves him right. The man of mystery.
Does. Yeah, he does, the man of mystery. So good luck to you, Dennis, or, nun Dennis or whatever. I still the idea of him dressed as a nun. It's got me for some reason. I don't know why I've made this up, but there you go. He probably is.
He couldn't find his right clothes. He's having a problem with his eyes now, apparently, the poor man. He's got an eye problem.
I know. He showed me the other night, and but I think it's going. I think he's got to have a little bit more checking out, but he's covered. He seems very relaxed with it. I have to say, it's, I've been banged up a few times and in hospitals and things like that and stitched up and bits sawn off, seriously, and things like that. But eyes, no, I don't want anybody going, that's the thing where I look and people go, oh, that's quite courageous. I don't like anything near my peepers, but there you go.
As long as he keeps his voice. I mean, I don't want to see him lose his eyes, but should he go blind, as long as we can keep him in his voice, that man is...
He's just getting started, is Dennis. He's doing great.
Major act, boy. Yes, major act.
Fantastic stuff.
He has got the Middle East science down pat. I mean, this is where you go to hear about what's going on in the Middle East. The guy knows everything about it.
Well, I think also, when I've been on with him and you've been on with him and stuff, it's just... he covers ground very quickly and very accurately with things. By the way, anybody just tuning in, you're listening to Inside the Eye Live. Without Dennis Feccio, he's not here. So we're talking about him, aren't we, Michael? We're just talking about him. We're not talking to him. We're talking about Dennis behind his back because he's dressed up as a nun somewhere. And so we're taking full advantage of his weakness at this moment in time here at revolution.radio. And and just to let you know, Dennis will be back here, I believe, possibly not dressed as a nun next Thursday, but he's definitely going to be here on Saturday as well for his regular 3-hour slot at 10 a.m. on revolution.radio. Anyway, where were we before I got distracted with all this nun chat?
About you're playing to farmers, a group of people that aren't showing any emotion at all, and I'm speaking to people with their minds elsewhere. So yeah, that's the way it goes. Other people, I've had audiences like that too without snipers out there. So I'm kind of hedging my bets on this one, but yeah, it's up and down type of thing. But there we go with the.
I think speaking's different, isn't it? You see, music you can kind of hide behind a wall of sound and stuff. Speaking's different, and I don't know. Theater acting I would think would be a big come from, particularly if you forget your lines.
Wow,
it's such an accurate, precise art. You can't. We got it wrong. People, there's always someone sitting around going, "You got that totally wrong." Whereas, with rock songs and stuff, you can mumble stuff and nobody even cares.
How about being a magician? What if that doesn't go well? I mean, people.
Well, you can always make yourself disappear, I suppose. Hey, presto, I'm off. Bang.
Can you imagine some of the harder acts, though? I mean, serious. They're like, yeah, a magician. If people aren't applauding, if they're not laughing, if they're not going ooh and man, you're flopping big time. So.
One of the things that is being made to disappear, sort of pulling us back a little bit.
Are you segueing into something new here?
We're having too much fun. This is a problem. We're having too much fun. We're pulling us back in. One thing that is disappearing, of course, is white people out of white films and dramas and stuff. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about the Dickens thing at great length in the first sort of half of the show, that film, of course, is nothing but white people. It just is. It's, in other words, it's accurate because that is exactly what it would have been like. And this is not me being picky on a race thing. I have this bugbear that I'm sick to death of my culture being hijacked by this liberal agenda. And I mentioned the other night when we were on Graham's show just a couple of days ago, it's worth repeating. There's the BBC, the Bolshevik Brainwashing Corporation, has just rolled out a big drama that they've obviously shelled out a great deal of money on, which is an adaptation of Victor Hugo's Les Miserables, or Les Miserables, if we were to pronounce it properly. And I actually recorded it with a view that I thought I'd quite like to watch it. I understand that the novel, which is pretty big, is reckoned to be a novel that embodies the best of Christian charity, which in many ways Dickens does. This is one thing that really leaps out about Dickens. It is that there is something about the goodness of the heart that runs through much of Dickens' work, which I personally cherish. I need to be reminded of this. It's what makes life worth living, as far as I'm concerned. And I understand that Les Miserables is similar in tone. Anyway, the opening sequence of this adaptation opens up on the battlefield at Waterloo the day after the battle. So the battlefield is just strewn with the wreckage of the battle, i.e. men and horses in bits everywhere, And you see this character come running across the field who is obviously robbing he's robbing the bodies. I think that's what they kind of did. And particularly teeth. Teeth were extremely valuable at the time, so they would remove teeth from the troops, not just for the goal, but also I think they would use them to supply false teeth to people that were in need of them and things like this. So it's rather grim and grindy business. The problem is, Michael, that as this character loomed into view after about 30 seconds, it turned out that he wasn't European. Let me just put it that way. At which point, I just stopped the thing, deleted it, deleted the link to record the Ensire series, and just had to bin it. And I go into a rage. I don't want to go. I'm not going to reenact it here because this is a family program and it's not good. But I did go into a rage about it because it seems everything now that you touch is tainted with this lie that's shot through on every level. Now, if black people want to make films about Zulus or whatever they want to make about, that's fine. And if I want to watch it, I'll watch it, but I expect it to be accurate. This stuff is a nonsense. It's gibberish,
Yeah. We're inundated by it here in America, and I know also in Europe. This idea that this inclusivity, this mad, crazy attempt to include as many races and be as diverse in movies that depicting times that had no diversity, had no blacks and browns running around. I'm sure that we're going to be seeing a hell of a lot more than that soon. This idea, well, for instance, the Mayflower. If they ever want to make a movie on the Mayflower, I can almost guarantee you half the families will be black or brown on there instead of all white. It's madness. It's crazy. And yes, there will be some susceptible viewers who think that's the way it really was. But when they find out that this has all been a lie, how does that going to play out? They're going to be joining us. I think the same people, when they find out the truth of the history books and the movies and the TV films and the things and American commercials right now. This I think it's all part of the same program, that is to exterminate white people. Simply put, as simple as I can make it, to get rid of us totally. In American commercials now, there's a real push to have minorities, mixed couples, mixed race couples, black men, white women, brown men, white women, you name it. If aliens landed in America and watched these commercials at the time, they would think that 75% of our population is either black or brown. And very small percentage of white people. But it's the race mixing that goes with it, and this attempt to
we're going to a break, Michael. Just to let you know, we're going to a break. So we're going to come back to the extermination of the white people in the last half of the show. And the break's on now. So we'll be back with you in a few minutes' time here at revolution.radio.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hey everyone, it's Barbara Jean Lindsay, the Cosmic Oracle. If you have questions about your past lives or future plans, need answers from the cosmos about your love life or career, or just want to keep your finger on the pulse of the planet, check out my show, The Cosmic Oracle, here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendovite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. You're listening to Inside the Eye Live with Dennis Fetcho. Except, yeah. I'm not Dennis Fetcho. And we're back here at revolution.radio with you for the next and final half hour of the show. This beautiful Thursday evening, wherever you may be. I'm joined by Michael Goodrich. Michael, I am joined by you, aren't I? You're with me for the last 30 minutes, yes? He's not. He's gone. Can you believe that? So Michael hopefully will be joining us in a few seconds. Maybe he's gone off and decided to play. Oh, there he is. There he is. Michael, welcome back.
Hi, Paul. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, there was this sort of 15-second pregnant pause.
Oh, boy.